So does this speech give us a clearer idea of where President Trump feels his party's vulnerable ahead of the midterms?
Well, I think he's avoiding the issues that they're vulnerable around, which is primarily, I think, affordability and immigration. He's always operated in a reality distortion field throughout his career, long before he came to the White House. And I think that's a way he keeps himself afloat. It's a way he keeps himself energized. It's useful to him. It is not useful to his party right now. It's not useful to voters, and it's not useful to average Americans who are struggling with a genuine affordability crisis that he's denying it exists.
This is always a set-piece moment for presidents to talk about their own achievements as well. And in that context of the way that you've described how President Trump delivered this speech as well, I mean, is it going to do anything to help rally support? Well,
I think politicians, Stephen, of all stripes, like to speechify in poetry, but the reality is that voters live in prose. They live in just practical policy solutions to their problems. And most Americans now don't favor the way in which the White House has cracked down on immigrants, the violence associated with it, the lawlessness associated with it. Gas prices are still higher than most Americans like. Electricity prices have spiked. Grocery prices have spiked. And Trump put nothing on the table to ameliorate that, which is extraordinary. Pardon me. It's extraordinary because he basically got back into the White House because of rampant inflation during the end of Joe Biden's term. And Trump campaigned against that, so he knows how vulnerable a sitting president can be to voters who are anxious about prices. And yet he's actually doing nothing to staunch it because, frankly, he can't.
There is so little policy in this speech. What's the plan? What does it appear to be?
Well, I think the interesting thing is this is how he's going to campaign in the midterms, and I don't think it'll be successful. That they're likely to lose the House of Representatives to the Democrats at least. The Senate looked safely Republican for quite a while. There is talk that may be in play, but even if they only lose the House of Representatives, it will cause a lot of his standard policy-making efforts to screech to a halt. He'll still try to accomplish things through executive action. But that's another reason the Supreme Court ruling on tariffs last Friday was significant, because it essentially started putting parameters on this idea of what can a president say is an emergency and then act unilaterally around, whether it's tariffs or immigration or foreign wars. And the more that gets circumscribed, the less he can do independently. So that's also an important development.
How should we expect the Democrats to play this then, given that, they were obviously watching very closely for any of those issues that they're going to be able to try and pick up now in the campaign for the midterms? Can they respond to this strategy by Trump and the Republicans effectively?
Well, I think you saw in the rebuttal speech that Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger gave after the State of the Union. It was very interesting that she was chosen to do it, because both she and Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey ran as centrist women, as Democrats, and they roundly rolled back Trump's victory with Latino and black voters in the state of New Jersey. They both campaigned on electricity prices. They just campaigned on bread and butter affordability issues. And Spanberger, in her rebuttal speech last night, hit on those things. And she said, you just basically watched performance art and he's not doing anything for you. And I think that's accurate. And so I think you're getting a taste of how the Democrats are going to campaign at the midterms and beyond. I think another thing to focus on in the State of the Union is Trump remarked, I think definitely at least once, and maybe more than that there was electoral fraud afoot, and that we can expect there to be cheating at the voting booth. And that's teeing up the possibility at the midterms that if things aren't going favorably for him, and under U.S. law, if there's suspected abnormalities at voting booths, the federal government is allowed to enter the process and take it over from states. And I do think he's setting up the idea that if election results aren't in his favor come November, he'll take extraordinary steps to disrupt them. And in which case, then the U.S. would would be in the middle of a constitutional crisis. We are not there yet, but he's been beating around this theme for quite a bit, and he brought it up last night in the State of the Union.
Tim, as you're in London, I do wonder how you think the UK should approach President Trump to be taken more seriously by him, both when it comes to the war in Ukraine, very little said about the conflict in this speech, but also on tariffs, so that being front of the queue actually means something when it comes to trade.
Well, I do think that Trump, among all the trading partners, is predisposed to look favorably on the UK. I think what we saw happen since Trump rolled out the tariffs almost a year ago is that whatever he proclaims, there's ample maneuvering room to lobby different people in his administration, the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, to get carve-outs on the most threatening and burdensome tariff rates. That happened across the board. It happened around industries. It happened on a country-by-country basis. And I think the thing everyone should learn, I think, from this, from a purely strategic and negotiating position, is he can be outmaneuvered as long as you don't try to outmaneuver him to his face.